Welcome to Centre Court with thanks to OMF. Kick back and relax with an adjustable bed from Australian designed and owned OMF. Watch sport your way. And of course, Cobram Estate, Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil, grown, harvested and first cold pressed in Northern Victoria. I'm Bianca Chatfield, and of course alongside me for another episode of Centre Court is Maddie Browne. Maddie, we still can't figure out who's going to finish in this top four. It's causing us headaches.
I know, we've been doing the maths and, you and I still go, I still don't get it. I'm still not too sure about it. But, 2 games left. I think the top teams still have some fine-tuning to do and some questions to be answered. And the ones that are still in with a mathematical chance, they've got still destiny in their own hands a little bit, but they're relying a lot on everything else to go their way.
Well, it was a very interesting round 12. Let's get into the OMF overview. Watch sport your way. Let's take a look at what happened in round 12. So, to start off with, the Thunderbirds absolutely smacked the Melbourne Vixens at home at the Entertainment Centre. They are hot on that court, that's for sure. Then it was the Mavericks in Tassie beat the Lightning by 1. What an amazing last couple of minutes. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch that game. The Swifts and the Firebirds got up by 1 in that one, and then the Fever got up by 3 against the Giants at home. So it was a huge game, that one. Let's take a look now at the ladder as it stands. This is what we're trying to figure out, and I'm sure you all are there too. Vixens sit on top, but only by 1 game now. Thunderbirds and Fever not too far behind. And then if we look all the way down to the bottom, I'm pretty sure Swifts and Giants can't make it.
No, they can't. But, 4th spot still up for grabs with Lightning, Mavs and Firebirds. But as I said, they're not only, have to win their last 2 games, but they've also got to rely on other people beating some of those top teams. So I'm going to say that the top 4's already done and dusted.
Well, we like to bring you a guest from one of the Super Netball teams each and every week. And one team we haven't got to yet, that is the West Coast Fever. Off the back of their win against the Giants, we thought, you know what? Why don't we go straight to the source? That is Kelsey Browne, who is the newest member of the West Coast Fever team and showing off with all the sunshine in the background over there in West Australia. Kels, firstly, thank you for joining us. How's life over there in the green?
Thanks for having me, guys. It's nice to be on Centre Court. It's been amazing so far. I've absolutely loved the transition over West. And as I sit here in the sunshine, I've got a couple of jumpers on. I was saying I don't know how I'd acclimatise back to Victorian weather, but it's been beautiful. The club's been amazing. I've had the best sort of 6 months here, and a really, really exciting, hopefully, 4 or 5 weeks left of the season.
Kels, you're an experienced campaigner now. Talk to us, how do you feel like your role, but definitely, your career has evolved from, the learnings of when you're 20 to now being in your 30s. How have you seen it kind of obviously change over the years?
Yeah, it definitely goes in a blink of an eye. I was sitting sort of reflecting at the start of the year, and we did a lot of culture sessions at Fever and had the opportunity to sort of reflect on the last 10 years. And it does definitely change. I think early in your career, you definitely are there to sort of prove yourself, and you'll do anything to do that. And I think as your career moves on, you start to realise that there's a lot of things that are important in netball, and that's the camaraderie, the friendships, and the experiences that you have. So that's definitely been a transition for me. And then entering into Fever this year and getting the opportunity how I did, I think I've got a completely different perspective on elite sport and what you can add to teams. And my role has looked different across a number of different games this year. And I think it will look different across the next 2 and 3 if we make finals and everything like that. So I think it's about embracing the role that you're given, and it doesn't matter how big or small it is, it's going to have an impact in a team. And that's been something that I've transitioned sort of into later in my career and early in my 30s.
Well, I want to do a shout out too to Netball Scoop, who do a lot of netball coverage, but they did a story on you, I think it was last week, and I just found it really interesting to read, knowing you obviously off the court as well. And if you haven't read it yet, go back and read it. It's online at netballscoop.com.au, but don't quote me on that because I'm not sure. But I just really loved how honest and open you were about last year and how you got to the end of the season and you thought there was no opportunities out there for you, so you put your post up, and it was such a mature way to say, you know what, this is my time and I think it's done and I'm happy just to leave it there. And then to have everything come, you know, full circle for you and back on the court. It's been awesome to see Kelsey out there playing again because, you know, we saw with Magpies you had so much to still offer out there in Super Netball. I want to ask you now, that was a very long intro to this question, but I wanted to say for you personally, I mean, you started the season with West Coast Fever. It was a formidable start. We all were wondering, how the hell can you beat West Coast Fever? And then this second half of the season has been a real roller coaster ride. Take us inside the team and what it's been like, just to those two halves of the season, how different it has been.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's been trying not to label it as two halves because obviously we did get to a really great start. And I think for us, we've sort of reflected on the first probably 5 or 6 rounds and just saying we were a new team coming together, much the same as, you know, a Mavericks. But we had to learn each other. We had to really make sure that every time that we stepped out on court, we not only proved to ourselves that we were the team that we thought we were going to be, but we had to prove to everybody else that we were a team that had been put together and that were a real contender for a premiership. And I think for us, every single week in that first 5 or 6 rounds was, okay, we need to show up and we need to make sure that we're backing this up and we're proving to ourselves and gaining that confidence. And I think we did early in the season. And you guys would both know this, that Super Netball seasons are really interesting and teams start to get into flow. And obviously injuries can sort of happen and the difficulties that come along with a season. And I think for us, we've experienced all of that in the last 5 or 6 weeks. And I think for us, it's been more about maybe the first 5 rounds, they weren't outliers, but they weren't a true reflection of where the Super Netball competition is right now. And teams have really started to hone in and lock down on their skills and their attacking games. And it's really hard to win ball at the moment. So the games are close. I mean, in the overview at the start of this show, you showed how, you know, quickly games can turn and how close games are. So it has been a little bit of a roller coaster the last 5 weeks, but I look at, you know, the Firebirds game. Firebirds came out, they were unbelievable, and you're never going to take that performance away from them. We gave it our best that day and we weren't good enough. So I think that's a reflection of where the Super Netball season and teams are at, and every team is impressive at the moment and every team's putting really great performances, and that's why I reckon the last 2 rounds are going to be so interesting. We've got Vixens who are sitting top of the ladder and Mavericks who are trying to make the 4, and both of those are going to be huge games regardless of where you're sitting on the ladder. So yeah, it's been a talking point for us the last few weeks. You know, where are we sort of sitting? And we're very clear after the last 2 weeks on what we have to work on and what we are really, really good at. So I think it's now about using the next 2 games of refining that and making sure that finals, we're very sure on who we are and what our brand is as a Fever team.
So to ground yourself and get back to that form that you guys did at the start, what do you think is your greatest strength? I mean, people would say you've got Foul and Emmard in your team. That's your greatest strength. But, you know, we've seen that, you know, you can't win a premiership with one player. You have to have depth. You have to have every single person. What do you think the Fever's greatest strength is and why you'll probably take it out?
I'm going to say there's probably 2 things that we've identified, and I think Dan has spoken so much about this, and it was a huge part of our preseason was the depth of 10 players that we've got. And you saw on the weekend changes were made. They worked really well for us. I think our team is still refining who's going to start, who's going to be an impact player, what defensive end we're going to play, what attacking formation we're going to run. And I think that's a great thing for us, is to be able to have a lot of different combinations. And I hope for other teams coming up against us, it'll be like, who's playing this week? So I think that's going to be a strength if we can make sure that works in our favour. And I think the second thing is that we can be a really dominant 1-point netball team. And, you know, potentially we've had our struggles in the super shock period the last few weeks, just about, you know, ticking that scoreboard over. And we've come up against teams who are formidable in that space. So I think for us, our 1 point netball and making sure that we are really locked in and solid in that is going to be really important. So those two things, I think, for me, are what is going to help us go hopefully deep into finals.
Last question from me, Kels. You've been a part of teams where there's been tall holding shooters. So think back to Lightning with Caitlin Bassett, and then, of course, Shimona Jock with the Magpies. Now Fowler Nemard. When you turn around and look into the circle, what is the difference and what makes Fowler Nemard so good in that position?
She's just one, incredibly strong, and I think she's got a great netball brain on her shoulders. And I do think, and I've said this so many times this year, I do think people don't credit her for how much work she actually does off the ball. And you've seen this year her incorporate her 2-point shot. She's unbelievable at that. And just her strength and her positioning. If defenders are playing a split circle, she's able to find that back defender and open up a space for you. And then just the take on the ball as well. So I think for me, it was a big draw card for coming to the Fever, and it hasn't disappointed. She's been unbelievable, but I do think people don't actually see the work and the energy that she puts into the team and her teammates, especially Shanice out the front of her this year. It's been a huge transition for her coming from where she's been, and I think Janelle's been a huge part of where Shanice is sitting at the moment.
Well, we love that insight. We thank you so much for joining us, Kels. And that was the OMF overview. Kick back and relax from the adjustable bed from Australian design and owned OMF. Watch sport your way. It's time for the good oil, thanks to Cobram Estate, Australia's extra virgin olive oil. And joining us again is SEN Netball commentator Hannah Kuhar. Welcome, Hannah. What is the good oil that you've got for us this week?
Well, ladies, this battle for the top four, it feels like every week we're still no clearer. Is it going to come down to the third last round? No. The second last round? No. Really is going to be a fight till the final whistle. I mean, you look at the last round alone, we had 2 1-point wins, a 3-goal battle between almost the top of the ladder and 8th place. And who'd think the biggest margin would be given to the ladder leaders, the Vixens themselves. So what a fight to the finish.
Now, do you think we are going to be more clearer by the end of round 13 about what's happening? Or do you think it's going to come down to that last game? What is that last game of round 14 to really decide how this is all going to play out?
Oh, well, will the fate be in the hands of the T-Birds? Look, B, I've done my calculations, and I reckon of the remaining 8 matches, I'm going to say, I sound like an old school umpire, but I reckon 6 of them are really in a coin toss. I think only the matches of the Adelaide Thunderbirds, I reckon they might have a clearer run home. But I think everyone else, you can really see it going one way or the other.
I mean, the Firebirds obviously took down the Fever a couple of weeks ago. They finished with the Vixens. They could really shake up and determine exactly who finishes where, couldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. And it's crazy to look at them as pre-Bet bully, post-Bet bully, but it's the question of what are they going to do? Even with the out of Donnell Wallam, that wasn't even enough to quench what happened on the weekend. They're still a vibrant option. I mean, I've spoken to the Firebirds earlier today and I said, what's the go with Nelly? She's still a little bit under the weather. So if we see her out on the weekend, that's another wild card shot for the Firebirds to really propel forward. And I honestly don't think you can claim anyone out. Maybe the Giants, just given their percentage, they're the only team still in that 80% realm. So maybe you'd say they're probably not a chance to make it, but I think you can make a genuine case for any other team.
Now, Hannah, we can't have someone like you with your expertise in the game on without giving us your final 4 prediction and in what order is everyone going to finish. This is just what you think, okay?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's a tough question. I think if we go 1 to 4, it would be hard to knock the Vixens out of their minor premiership. I think they do have form, and albeit it has been a funny few weeks for them. I mean, since the halfway point of the season against the top 4, they've been lucky to defeat the Lightning by 2. And then last week, of course, the 18-goal loss to the Thunderbirds. But I think with a few tweaks, they should be holding strong against the Fever and the Firebirds. But I guess we'll see what happens
now hang on. You're locking Vixens in at 1.
Who's 2?
Who's number 2?
Okay. No dilly-dallying. Sure, you know what? I will I will say maybe the Thunderbirds.
Okay, T-Birds, I'm writing it down.
Yeah, I'll go the T-Birds in second. I'll stick with the Fever in third. Not controversial there, the top three to hold. The fourth position has been the one on everyone's lips. Lightning for me.
Okay.
I'd love to argue that the Mavericks, they've been the surprise packet. Can they do it? I think they can, but I just reckon the Lightning have been so unlucky with so many close losses. I think if they can get the numbers on the board, they're an easy option for four, albeit the Mavs, they've got a convincing case. And dare we say, I mean, we said about the Firebirds, they be talking in training about why not us? Why can't they be the team to sneak in fourth? And I love a fairy tale finish. I'll be cheering those two on. But if I do the maths, maybe the Lightning.
Well, Hannah, we've locked in your top four. We're going to revisit this, maybe the first week of finals, to say, hang on a minute, Hannah, this is what you thought. We've written it down. We love all of your intel, and I love that you're giving all the teams an opportunity, even the Giants, even the Swish, you're giving that slight opportunity.
You would make a great umpire, though, because you're giving everyone a chance.
Everyone a chance. But
ladies, with this season, who knows what can happen? We've still got 2 weeks to go, and we know what happens in a week of netball.
Well, exactly. And I know you like the chaos, so get ready, because it's all going to come down to, I reckon, round 14. The last game is the Thunderbirds and the Lightning to happen before finals. So I'm sure that might make a few decisions in how this plays out. Thanks so much for joining us, Han. That was The Good Oil. Thanks to Cobram Estate, Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil, grown, harvested and first cold pressed in northern Victoria. All right, Maddie, it's over to you for your minute. What have you got this week?
Look, well, I think there's been a bit of a theme today, and it has been about that finals. Who's going to make it? What are they? What teams will be in what positions? And I reckon there's 3 different areas that teams really need to work on. First of all, it's experience. There's flexibility, and I also think there's depth. Now, the top 3 teams are hitting about 2 out of those 3 quite well. The teams fighting for fourth, obviously Mavs and Lightning, have probably got maybe 1 out of those 3. So I have done a little bit of messy writing here, but the Vixens, they definitely tick off experience. They definitely tick off flexibility, but they've lacked in depth because they haven't had their whole 10 since round 3. But with Kate Eddy potentially coming back this round, that would obviously lift them in that area. And I reckon if they can hum on all 3, they'll be really, really hard to beat. Thunderbirds, they definitely have the depth. They use all 10 players every single game. They have the flexibility within, but experience. And you'd go, Maddie, they won a premiership last year, of course. They've got experience. But it's more about, for me, the leaders or the leadership, and when they are in a bit of a tough spot, who's standing up and where, because they're all role players. The Fever, you'd go, yep, they definitely have flexibility. They definitely have the depth. They do have experience, but I don't think we've seen it enough at the right moments. There is a combination of 7 that we've only seen once. It was in quarter 3 against the Thunderbirds, and that is their most experienced lineup. And I wonder whether Dan Ryan is holding that as a little bit of his weapon. Maybe we'll see it this weekend. But I reckon that could be the absolute key to them taking it. And as I said, 4th position, they definitely need to work on experience. We've seen Lightning show that they've got it, but flexibility, who's going on, where are they doing it? And even Kelsey spoke about, obviously in her chat, it's good to have depth, it's good to have the flexibility, but you also got to have some stability within it. So I think those 3 things, if whoever nails those 3, flexibility, depth and experience in all the right moments, they'll be taking out the flag.
Oh, don't you love it? So succinct, Maddie, that you can nail it down to those 3 things. It's something we can certainly keep an eye on over the next 2 rounds. You know what? Round 13 is nearly upon us, and let's get into the preview, and we'll start by looking at the fixture across all teams. So it starts off Saturday afternoon with the Giants and the Mavericks. Then it is the Firebirds hosting the Lightning, the local derby up there in Queensland. The Vixens and the Fever, that follows in Melbourne on Sunday, and then the Swifts and the Thunderbirds. Now, let's start with the Firebirds and Lightning. I think this game is going to be really interesting. You always know there's an extra emotional layer to games that happen, you know, when it's across town rivals. These 2 teams, they always bring their best when they come up against each other, not to mention now trying to fight for that 4th position as well. I really was impressed by the Firebirds being able to cover the likes of Danelle Wallen being out of the side, Tipper Dwan, Emily Moore, how they were able to move, even Emily Moore at the end of the game, being able to nail the clinch moments. I really think that the Firebirds defensively will be able to match it with the Lightning. I think it'll be really interesting what happens down the other end, though, depending on who is in the attack end for the Firebirds, because when Hinchliffe and Irvin are on, they're unstoppable and they're so strong. Courtney Bruce, how she fits in, is she back on full minutes yet? We're yet to see. That combination to me is quite interesting, how that plays out and how Belinda Reynolds chooses who starts and plays where.
And you'd think by now, all coaches should know what players they've got in what positions at their disposal and when they should be using it. And it's just fine tweaking, where I still think, as we've heard, I still think coaches are still going, oh my goodness, where and it sometimes has been because they're being forced to do that because of injuries. Courtney Bruce, she's an outstanding player, but where does she actually fit at the moment? So, it's probably a bad a nightmare for Belinda Reynolds, but what a bad headache to have.
Yes, and the Lightning just don't want to get into a battle in the final minute of a game, because that's where they really struggle, is closing out those wins. And we've seen it time and time again this season, so no doubt they will want to try and get a lead early, but if you're Firebirds, you're trying to stick with them all the way, because anything can happen come that final minute.
The other game we obviously have to look at as well is Vixens versus the Fever. You and I are both doing this game. You look, obviously, Fever started off so strong at the start of the season, but have really struggled to put those back-to-back wins together. Vixens had an uncharacteristic loss against the Thunderbirds last week, going down by 15. They really did show that when they aren't playing their absolute best, which I do believe Vixens was showing so much respect to the Thunderbirds defence. They actually stepped away from everything that they do so well. They started playing with a bit of hesitancy, but they do have the team. It's just when they actually do it. Fever, they're going to have to come over here. It's a hard task to win at John Cain Arena, but you know what? I think these are exactly the contests that all of these teams want heading into finals. You want to know that you're absolutely about to hit your straps and not be going, oh my goodness, we've got doubt in our game plan, in round 13. You want to know that it's solid. We've just got to go out there and execute it consistently.
And the battle between the two coaches, Dan Ryan and Simone McInnes, I think it's going to be fascinating. We've already been trying to put together the pre-game for the coverage on Fox Netball. And where it gets interesting is trying to figure out who's going to match up with who, because will they put Weston onto wing defence up against Alice Teague-Neild? Will Alice Teague-Neild be at wing attack?
Well, see, this is the thing, right? Definitely Vixens and Thunderbirds, they have a starting 7 and then they rotate from there. Fever have changed up their starting 7, and maybe that has been part of, a little bit of their inconsistency in not knowing what role they're playing and when. I would love to see Dan Ryan throw out his most experienced lineup, and that for me is Fallon Emmard, Teague-Neild, Brown, Anstis, Arian, Williams, and then Dehaney at the back.
Ooh,
we haven't seen it since round 9. So come on, Dan, show me what you're made of.
I love it. Don't miss a minute of all the round 13 action. It's time for our social scoop. Now, this week, we have a question from Nioka. She asked us, what does Lucy Austin need to do to get a starting spot at the Thunderbirds? I understand she's an impact player, but how does she get beyond that with no game time? You know what? Fascinating question. Yeah. But I just think at the moment, Romelda Aitken-George is playing the best she has played since she entered this competition many, many years ago. Yep. And I think Lucy Austin, we saw last year, probably performed better than what we've seen her perform this season. So I don't actually think she is ready yet to take on that role. The strength, not only just in her body, but also it's her decision making. You quite often see her in the pressure moments. She will look to the bench whether to take the 2 or to take the 1, and she just looks a bit unsure. And I reckon she'll get that more consistent court time, and that will come. But at the moment, I think she's better performing as an impact player for the Thunderbirds.
Agreed. And, the things that we don't see or aren't privy to is what's happening at training. And she's possibly getting as many opportunities as Romelda Aitken-George at training. Every team puts out all their different combinations and rotations, and maybe it's just not showing that it's as consistent as obviously having Aitken-George in there. Lucy Austin also playing reserve. She is getting some court time at obviously that level, or a little bit reduced. So I agree. I wouldn't be changing Aitken-George. She's been so dominant this season for them. It is working. And sometimes it is that mental side of the game. In Lucy Austin, I'm sure, would be talking to Tanya Obbs and Kathy Fowler's going, what's my role? You just got to execute that, Lucy. And when the time comes, we might need you for more, we might need you for less, but that's the really important thing about the teams that are winning and going to probably go deep into finals.
And you can't underestimate how much she would be learning from sitting behind Romelda Aiken-George as well.
Absolutely.
She's
What a
now
great
an
role model.
invitee into the national squad as well. She's only going to grow as a player from that extra association with all of the top players. So I don't think it'll be too long until Lucy Austin will have a cemented position on court, but definitely not this season. Don't forget, send in any of your questions, of your thoughts. We would love to hear from you, and all of our social tags are on the screen right now. Well, that was another episode of Centre Court. Thank you to OMF, Watch Sport Your Way, and Cobram Estate Australian Extra Virgin Olive Oil. It's goodbye from us, and enjoy round 13.